Hey everybody, it's 7:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started for our live session. So just so you guys know, this session is going to be recorded, and we're recording it now. So if you can't join us sometime for the live session, it will always be recorded, posted on YouTube, and then I'm going to post the link back into the FSO activity that whatever matches the week. So obviously week 1 will be posted in week 1, week 2 in week 2, and so on and so on. So before we actually get started, let's go ahead and do some housekeeping stuff. The very first thing is, who am I, right? So my name is Dan Williams. I'm your instructor for the class, and I'm actually the main course director for SDI online. And I'm the one that made a ton of your videos. So if you hear my voice, that is why I sound familiar. My email address is up there, so it's dawilliams@fullsail.com. You can always FSO direct message me as well, and that's the little box in the upper right-hand corner that looks like a little message. But probably the best way that most of you guys are finding right now is through the Slack Messenger. And so let me go ahead and pull that over. So Slack Messenger is one of your main assignments for this week, and let me go ahead and pull that over. So this is going to be in your graded assignments. Do these as soon as possible. So the very first one is the Slack Messenger, and it is a graded assignment worth 1%, a whopping 1% of your total grade. Now, why we make it 1% is it's extremely important that you guys do it and do it as soon as possible. Okay, so the Slack Messenger is really great because it gives you almost instant access to your other students as well as your lab assistants and your course directors. So I'm one of them. I am Dan Williams. So in case you find me on here, this is what I look like. Ta-da! And there is my name. And you can always tell that the people that are actually course directors and stuff, because we'll have little icons at the end of our names, like these little computers. I think that's actually where we're going to be going to, but a couple of them have a couple other weirder icons. But for students, don't put in these icons after your names because that's just going to signify as a full SOL employee. All right. The other great thing is some of you are on the central track in general, which is wonderful, but you always want to make sure that you actually join the specific class or channel for your class as well. So ours is going to be the SDI channel, and a lot of you have already joined it as well. The great thing about this channel is this is where you're going to be getting help from the lab assistants. Okay, so if you need help, the very first thing I would suggest you guys doing is to Google it, right? And I always kind of get people that laugh at me when I say that, but really trying to figure out your own problems is a giant thing about problem solving and troubleshooting as part of programming as well. And see, I know you're in the class, and I know you just joined because of it, so thank you. So anyway, so trying to troubleshoot it yourself, always a good idea. However, we have 2 lab assistants for you guys, and they are going to be manning this SDI channel. And their names are Vid Strickland and Keith Weber. Okay. Now, their schedule is going to be listed on the Getting Help section of the FSO, which is right here. So Getting Help. And so you can actually see their calendars. But the thing that they're also going to do is that when they come on to the start working, they're going to kind of introduce themselves. Here we go. Here's Vids. So good morning, everyone. My name is Vid, and I'm one of the lab specialists. If you have any general questions, feel free to hit me up, right? So you can either ask your question, if it's kind of a general question, inside of the SDI window, or you can directly message Vid by clicking on him and going to the direct message section as well, okay? So this one, and then the other one is Keith Weber. I just saw him in here. There he is. So Keith Weber looks like that. I got to tell him to update his picture. So those are the 2 main things. Of course, I'm always on there as well, so you can direct message me if it comes to that, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. So mine, if you want to try to find me, just go to the direct message, type in Williams or Dan, and I'll pop right up. So if you see me there you know, it's me. The other instructor for this class is Lee Lewis, okay? I don't think he's actually joining us today on the live session, because I don't think he is. He's actually teaching on campus as well as online as well, so he's kind of been busy. So Lee Lewis is also on Slack, and so that's what he looks like over there. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is that he also has GoToTraining office hours. So you can, if you're in his class, in the Getting Help section as well, he actually posts his live open hours, so you can always get a hold of him that way. Or he prefers email. So it's kind of whatever works for you guys, whatever works for us, and it's kind of a mixture in the middle, okay? The great thing about Slack as well is a lot of us have it on our mobile phones. So even if we're not directly at our desk, we can still help you guys kind of answer questions and stuff like that. Couple general things about Slack though. Remember not to post code into Slack. Never go inside of your code, copy and paste it into a chat window, okay? Because your code you have to treat as precious, okay? So you don't want to give everybody your code because then they might use it and claim it as their own. And the problem is if you have the same code as somebody else, then it's harder to kind of say who did it first, and so both of you would get dinged for plagiarism. So help yourself. Don't copy and paste your code directly into here. If you have to share your code, you can always take a screenshot like I showed you guys in the Slack information as well. So that's just the shift command and the number 4. Your mouse turns into a little cross beam. You can kind of draw it over you want and let go, and it will go ahead and take that picture for you. Okay. So that is Slack. And also, if you're going to ask one of us for help, Vid or Keith or myself or Lee, sometimes we're going to ask you to send us the whole file. And what we need to actually look inside of your file is the whole entire folder that's going to be encompassing for it. So you want to send us the whole folder as a zipped file and that we can open it. So the couple people that you can send your code to is anybody that works here, because trust me, we're going to see your code anyway. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any kind of questions about Slack that I can answer for you? And for those of you in the live session, because we have 22 people, that's actually really great. If you guys, as we're going along, and if you guys have questions, feel free to type in the chat window, and I'm going to get to those as soon as possible. But make sure you ask it when you think of it, so you don't forget that thought. Okay? That is great. And I noticed a couple of people that said it was wonderful, like Sarah said it's wonderful, and it actually is quite nice. So we try to help you guys as soon as possible. Okay? And we do have morning and night hours as well for live assistance. So for those of you that work late, we have later hours as well. Okay? So that is Slack, and I'm actually going to turn off Slack now because if I don't, it'll just keep popping up for us. But this is probably the only time that Slack is actually closed on my computer. Okay, so like I said before, the other instructor is Lee Lewis, and so he does have all of the same contact information, but he's one of those people that kind of prefers email address, emails back and forth, so you can always find him right here at his email address. Okay, so let's cover the basics of this class. So the basics of SDI is we're going to teach you how to problem solve. And problem solving is a giant component of actually learning how to program, which seems kind of a little bit weird, right? But in order to be able to program, you have to figure out what's wrong and write the code to be able to fix it. Or you have to notice there's a problem and try to figure out the different steps in order to solve it, right? So that's what the problem solving activities are for, to kind of get you kind of like thinking outside of the box and to kind of start you down that right path, okay? The other things that we're going to teach you in this class is the basic procedural programming, which of course is the step-by-step programming method. And the great thing about that is along the way, we're going to teach you what a variable is, what a conditional is, what loops and functions, classes and objects are. Now, this is really great because the terminology, variables, conditionals, loops, and so on, is going to be used in all of your other programming classes. So once you know what a variable is, you know what a variable is in PHP or Python or JavaScript. The thing that might change from one language to another is the syntax. And what I mean by that is, how do I write a variable? How do I write a conditional? How do I write a while loop? Okay, so those might be slightly different from language to language, but the concepts and the true concepts is what I need you guys to learn from this class. What is a conditional? When is it useful? How do I use a loop, and why would I use a while loop instead of a for loop? And things like that. So once you understand the basics of it, then you can actually use that in all of your other programming languages. Okay, so we have a quick question. So she wants to know why we didn't have a class in programming 1 class that is more in depth than this class. Is it more in depth? Why didn't we have a programming 1 class, and is it more in depth than this class? This basically is your programming number 1 class, so I'm assuming that you don't have any programming knowledge at the start of this, and by the end of this class, we're going to teach you how to write C#. Okay, so this is going to teach you all of the basics and go all the way up to object-oriented programming. And then your future classes will start at object-oriented programming and then take you way further down the rabbit hole. So by the end of this, you guys will be learning multiple languages. So when anybody says like, oh, I speak 2 languages, and it's like German and English, you can be like, oh, I speak 17, and it's PHP and Python and everything like that. Okay. She is asking, hold on one second, because, and the course had programming 1. Okay, so this particular student has game development before, and they had a different course called Programming Number 1. Programming Number 1, I'm sure, covered basically the same stuff as us. The reason that we changed the name and slightly what we're teaching is because all the students in this class are going to be mobile and web. And so what we're doing is we're doing C# because that is a useful language in both the mobile and web degrees. And yes, you will learn a language in 4 weeks. Great. All right. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask, because this is what this hour is for, is to answer any of the questions that you guys have for the week. What does C# stand for? You know what's funny is I have absolutely no idea. So if anybody wants to Google that on the side and then post that back in there, you can go right ahead. But C# is just a derivative of the C language. So that's what it comes for. The sharp, I actually have no. I don't. You know what's funny is I don't think I ever looked it up. So if anybody wants to, you can actually answer it. If not, I'll totally Google that in a little bit at the end, and I'll come back to that question as well. So the main thing that you guys will be learning in this class is the terminology, the basics of programming, and at the end of it, you will learn how to write C#. Okay? We have one more question from James. He wants to know, is that why we're doing C# and not Java? Yes, actually. Java and C# are extremely similar. The syntax is similar, and how we would actually write it is all similar as well. We chose C# because it has more applications in both of the degrees. Okay? And yes, the learning curve is actually interesting. Learning curves in this class are fairly steep at the beginning. So this is something that everybody kind of has to get in the right mindset for. So it is a lot of information being thrown at you on week number 1, because you have to learn all of the basics and how the basics build on each other. And then once you go forward, then it's going to be a lot easier to kind of now add one more thing to it, and now add one more thing to it. But at the beginning, it's, oh my God, I have to install the software. I have to figure out how to actually write it, how to run it, and then all of the basic terminology for it. So the learning curve for this class is fairly steep, but we still try to give you guys enough time to actually grasp it and make sure we're all on the same page. But this class does assume that you start at 0 and we all ramp up together. Okay? Great. So thank you very much for all the questions, by the way. And we're going to go ahead and close this for 1 second. Now, this first week is going to be slightly different than the other weeks for the live go-to training. If you guys have retaken this class, and there's nothing wrong with retaking it, sometimes you kind of have to go over stuff more than once, which is perfectly acceptable. What we're going to do is this week, we're going to kind of go through what is due for the class, and then I'm going to give you a demonstration of kind of one file. Okay, but going forward, these future weeks, I'll tell you what's going to be due that week. We're going to briefly talk about it, but then I'm going to open up the floor to you guys, and it's going to be mostly question and answer based. So come with questions that you guys want, or if you want to see how to code something specific, you can actually ask that question in the chat window, and instead of doing a program that I'm going to develop, I'm just going to kind of code what you guys want to see, if that makes any sense. Okay, so if no one shows up and they're like, we have no questions, then it might be a really short week next week, right? And if nobody has anything, I'll kind of throw out some of the common pitfalls and stuff like that. But the next week and the following weeks after that, come with questions to the class and come with stuff that you would want to see shown, okay? So let's go over what's due this first week. And this week has kind of a lot of stuff due. The first one, which we already talked about, is the Slack Messenger. It's fairly simple to set up. It shouldn't take you that long, but it's extremely important because it's the way a lot of people are going to be communicating with you in this class. Okay. The main one is this setting up your IDE. How many people in the live chat have done this yet and have done it successfully? Yep. Okay, I probably should have asked the reverse of who hasn't, right? Oh, not at all. Okay, so the thing about this setting up your IDE, it is extremely time consuming. So please, if you have not started this yet, start this now, because there are a couple files that you have to download, and 2 of them are 4 gigabytes, right? And so the gigabytes can take anywhere from like an hour to 6 hours to download, depending on your download speed. So you might be downloading stuff for 12 hours. Okay, so it all depends upon if your internet is slow. And exactly. Wow, James, yours only took 40 minutes to download? That's crazy. And Demetrios took 2 days. All right. So, okay, I guess it's anywhere from 40 minutes to 2 days, which is kind of crazy. But make sure that you are actually watching all of the videos inside of here, okay? And I'm going to open it up really fast because I've already gotten a couple questions where people just scroll down here and look at the PDF, okay? The PDF is great. Do not get me wrong, right? So it has all the step-by-step information on how to download and what you're supposed to be doing and how to install it. But I want you to go ahead and watch the videos as well because the videos actually walk you through how to install it. And it shows you the whole entire process because I actually sped it up. So I sat here for an hour when it downloaded like and installed the one time, and I filmed the whole thing and I just like sped it up 5,000 times the speed of it and made it 40 seconds, right? So that's kind of why I want you guys to actually go through it. All right. I had trouble with Visual Studio and I don't know why. So Yvonne, if you still have trouble, Keith and Vid will be able to help you with it. And if you don't get them, you can always get me, but we can actually work one-on-one trying to get that installed. One more question for you. We have, do we have to play the bot game? Yes, Lightbot is actually a super important part because you know what? It is deceptively simple, right? So, and what it does is it forces you to kind of figure out step-by-step logical processes. And what's funny is I put it in there now, but if you scroll ahead to like the last weekend functions, it's actually in there again because once we go through functions, it's kind of like code that repeats itself. That's when the bot game gets a little bit harder, and I want you guys to play it one more time, right? So that's kind of the fun part about that game. Okay. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to install all of the stuff, and at the end of it, you're going to screenshot your screen, proving that you have it installed. Once you do, then you will get your 2%, okay? So just by installing the software that you will be using in this class, you're going to get 3% of your total grade, which is great, right? So then we go through the discussions, which is great, all of our go-to training links, the general information, which is all super important, so make sure that you go through all of these different sections. And then we have that getting help section. This one is super important, so if you guys get stuck along the way, please ask for help. I cannot stress this enough, but the only way that we're going to know that you have a problem is if you tell us that we have a problem, right? So, and that's kind of the online student aspect of stuff like that. I need you guys to be able to willing to reach out and ask for help, okay? So if you can't solve it yourself, if you troubleshooted it and it's taking you hours and hours to get through something, ask for help. Deal? Everybody in the live chat? Is that good? You're going to ask for help if you need it? Okay. Deal, 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 deal. All right. If anybody says no, I'm going to stop. So all I see is yups and deals, so that's good. All right. So get help if you need it. Then the other graded assignment is this professionalism. This is going to be standard in all of your Full Sail classes, okay? So professionalism is across the board. It's the GPS that we talked about. And basically what this boils down to is be a good person, right? And do not cheat. That's pretty much about it, right? So inside of the course information section, I think it is, there's this whole kind of welcome video. And it's sort of funny, and it's sort of not funny. No, it's not this one. Where is it? It must be the welcome. Oh, welcome to SDI. And, well, let me pull it up for a second. I'm not going to make you watch it now, but if you haven't yet, watch this screencast for the introduction. Only takes 5 minutes, but it talks about what plagiarism is and how it relates to coding, okay? So plagiarism is anything that is even remotely close to any of the examples given in class, and I can't stress this enough. Following along with one of the tutorials in the class or following along with a go-to training that we're doing and just switching out the variable names or using the same math as we're doing, right? It doesn't actually teach you what you need to be learning. So what I need you to do is get the concepts from the different videos and from the different trainings and then figure out something different, and it has to be 100% different that you can do with what we're showing you. Okay, so inside of that welcome video, I'm like, if I had a dog and it was living in a brown house with a green bowl and his name was Fido, if we just switch their name, is it different? And it's not, right? So that is why we have to make sure that it is completely different. Hold on one second. Daniel has a question. Since C# is utilized for multiple platforms, will we be testing this code with an emulator for mobile platforms? Yeah, it comes much later. Roy answered your question before I could. This is the basic class. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running it in debugging mode, right? And so what that's going to do is it's going to bring up the console and allow us to kind of see everything that way. So we're going to be working in the console for this class. In future classes, absolutely. You're going to get to a point where you're going to be designing a whole entire web page or mobile app, and you're going to be coding the whole entire thing with buttons and forms and everything like that. Okay? So not this class, future classes. So that's professionalism. So it is don't cheat. The other thing I wanted to tell you about this is each and every person has a coding style. Okay? It is how they code, it's how they comment, it's how they name their variables, and it's how it looks, okay? As soon as you turn in your first assignment, I and Lee are really good at this because we will get to know your coding style, okay? So if your coding style vastly differs from your project 1 and project 2, or your worksheets that you're doing or something like that, we will know. It also is known if you copy and paste things from the internet, because we have been teaching this class for years. And so trust me, I have Googled everything that you think you're probably Google. And so we have seen all of the example code. So don't do it. Please, please, please. My worst thing in this whole entire life is giving somebody a 0 and putting out the plagiarism stuff, because it's a lot of paperwork for me. So don't make me do it. All right, so then we have all of the week 1 activities. So you have to go through all of this, and there is a lot of videos, but they're all really good. Then we come down to the activity expressions worksheet. So what this does is it gives you some preset examples, and I'm going to pull it up for you. And these are preset examples that kind of get you in the mindset of working with expressions and working with whole programs that you're going to be doing. So work through these. It's kind of the average shopping bill, and it kind of lays out what you're going to be given. You're going to be given this. Here's what you actually want to do, and then here's what your outcomes should be. Okay. Now, this is great because it's telling you what to do, and it makes it much easier. However, when we come to the next graded assignment, which is due on Sunday, by the way, Sunday by midnight, and it is our assignment expressions. And one person's already turned it in because they're working ahead. So let's go ahead and look at this. Now, this assignment expression has a whole entire 21-minute video that explains it, so I'm not going to go fully in depth here, but I'm going to touch on the major points of it. And I'll be touching on your major points of how you'll be graded each and every go-to training, okay? So the main thing is to look at the PDF for this one, after you watch the video, of course. And the most important page is this very first page. So this is called a rubric, and I'm hoping that you guys have seen these before, all right? So the rubric is basically telling you, how do I get an A on this project? That is 100% what a rubric does, because it's telling you what we're grading and what percentage it's worth of your total grade, okay? So the bare minimum requirements are at the top, and you have to have a working C# file with no major syntax errors and no runtime errors. And if you haven't hit one of these runtime errors yet, that's basically when the program will not compile and run. So if you turn in a file that doesn't work, right, I can't grade it, and you'll get an automatic 0. So that's point blank. The other way to get an automatic 0 is down here on the calculation section. So if you have no calculations that are present inside of the example, then you will also get a 0 for the project. So that's the 2 major ways to get a total 0 on the project. Oh, by the way, the other way to get a 0, don't turn it in. I have a lot of people do that too. So if you don't turn in anything, you will get a 0. All right, so let's go ahead and run through these. So the first topic is the calculations, and it is worth 20% of your total grade, okay? So this column right here is what of your percentage of the grade for the whole assignment this portion makes up. Now, here's the weird part. These next couple columns are how I get that percentage of this section, okay? So if you did an excellent job, and you'll get 100% of the 20 points, okay? If you want 100% of these 20 points, here's what you have to do. You have to do everything in this box. If you'd like to kind of half-ass it and do a good job at it, you're going to get 75% of those 20 points, and this is what you have to do. If you do a bad job at it, then you're going to get fair, and that's 30% of your 20 points. And if you do a poor job, then you're going to get 0 out of this whole 20 points. And especially for this one, you're going to 0 for the whole project. All right. So what you're mainly are shooting for is you have to use some type of math that is going to be used in a calculation. And you have to have at least 2 factors as variables that are not hard-coded. And what I mean by hard-coded is if you're typing in the declaration and the definition of a variable, that is probably going to be hard-coded because you have to say var width equals 20 semicolon. Then you're hard-coding the number 20 specifically for that width, then it's not going to be changed. Okay, so what I mean by these are, you need 2 user variables that you're going to be asking the user for and use those inside of your math. And you also have to use 2 different types of math operators. And a math operator is a multiplication, a division, a plus sign, a minus sign, that kind of stuff. Okay, so as long as you have 2 non-hard-code variables, which means user variables, and 2 different types of math, you get 20 points right off the bat. Okay. Let's go down to the next one. So next one is prompts. So the user has to be prompted for at least 3 variables or values by a write line, and the information has to be stored inside of a variable. So you have to prompt 3 times the user and store what they give you inside a variable. If you do that, you get 10 points out of the total. Okay. If you only do 2, well, then you're going to get 7 points out of 10. And if you only do 1, then you're going to get 3 points out of 10, and so on. Now, the next one is casting. And casting is when we take the user variable, which is going to be a string data type, because anytime we use that read line, we're asking the user for a string, and we're going to parse it or cast it as a different data type. And usually we're going to cast it as a number data type, an integer, a decimal, a double, or something like that. And as long as you do that for all 3 of the values that you prompt for, then you'll get all 10 points. Is everybody with me so far? Any questions? Everybody has it so far? Good. All right. Let's continue. So the next one is data types, and it's worth, again, 10% or 10 points out of the total 100. So this is always the hard one for people because you have to use at least one of every single variable, right? Well, data type. So by that I mean you have to have 1 array, 1 string, and 1 number. And 1 number, you can have a double, you can have an int, a decimal, whatever type. But you have to have at least 1 number, 1 string, and 1 array. Now, the array is what stops people usually. That's probably the number 1 thing that people get wrong in this is they don't put in an array. Arrays, when you first start learning them, are a little confusing, okay? But you have to think of it as an array as multiple variables that are kind of stored together. So if you're asking the user for something, and you ask them for more than 1 of something, maybe put that inside of an array, okay? So, and maybe you can put their string answers inside of an array, and you can convert them in other variables. Oh, great. So Stefan actually said it stumped him at the beginning, but he eventually figured it out. But you have to use an array, and just think of it as multiple variables. That's all you really have to think of it as. So as long as you do that, when you have each one of those, then you have 10 points. Now let's talk about output. So this is the final output to the user. And inside of it, it has to be the console.writeLine, so write to the console. It has to have calculated values, and these calculated values come from the calculation section, right? So whatever you're kind of calculating, and by calculator, by the way, I don't mean like this. Like, I don't want you guys making this, right? Because I don't want to type in 7 times 8 equals 56. So we're not making an actual calculator. We're making like a tip calculator or something like that. Like, how much was dinner, right? And how much of a tip are you leaving? Great. Well, here's how much you should actually leave as a tip. Something kind of like that. So something that people will actually find useful. So any kind of calculated values have to be in there. You have to have supportive, descriptive, narrative text. What that means is don't just put 56. Put the bill in total is $56, right? And to do that, you're going to have to use string concatenation. And remember, concatenation is just a super fancy word for meaning combining text strings together. So basically using a plus sign with text strings. So that is concatenation. All right. So as long as you do all those, then you get 15 points. Then we come down to the all or nothing type stuff. So the all or nothing type thing is the assignment operator, and it's worth 5 points. So you have to use at least one assignment operator, which is the plus equals, minus equals, star equals, divide equals, plus plus, or minus minus. Now, an assignment operator is something that permanently changes the value of that variable by however you want to do with it, right? And this is the other section that a lot of students actually have trouble with. So really understand what an assignment operator does, go through those examples, and try to figure out the best way to utilize it in your own code. And in my coding example for today, I actually do have one, and I have one common pitfall that students kind of fall into as well. So we're going to cover that in the live section when we actually start coding. Then we come to the other one of test values are going to be present and in a comment at the end of our code. And they are correct. This is super important. So what I want you to do is have a multi-lined comment at the end of your code and put the test values that you actually put inside of it. And this is super important because you need to be able to test your own program. Okay. I want to make sure that you're running it. I want to make sure you're typing in weird numbers, and I want you to verify that the computer is giving you the answer that it should. And that's what this section is for. I often have a lot of students that put in like, oh, I put in a 4 for a width and a 5 for a height, and it gave me 712. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. And you obviously didn't check that answer. So then something is wrong with your code. But I still have a lot of students put that in because they don't go back and double check that. So that's one of the common pitfalls for this section. And again, that's worth 5 points. Then we come down to the technical side of things. And one of them that I'm always find weird when students get this wrong is the naming convention. So you have to name your whole program. So when you go File, New, and Project, you have to name it your last name underscore first name underscore expressions assignment. Okay. If you do, you automatically get 5 points right off the bat. If you don't, then you will get a 0 out of 5 points. And why we make you do this is Lee and I have like 50 students combined, right? So if everybody named their whole entire project just expressions assignment, it would take us forever to figure out whose code is whose. So that is why this is super important and it must be done. And it's something that we won't, that's always going to be graded. Okay. We have a quick question from Jocelyn. If we finish early and our code is working, could we ask our instructors to check the code for us to double check that we have everything? Actually, a lot of people have this. So yes and no. So what I'm going to say for this is, what I would do is I would go one of the open office hours first and let the lab assistants look at it. Okay, so they know how things are graded as well, and they will look at it and kind of give you feedback, but they can't actually give you a grade for it. Okay, if you would like to contact Lee or I and do it, we sometimes have time for it, but sometimes we don't have time for it. And if you turn it in early enough, I myself will definitely look at it for you. So just remind me and send me a message. Hey, I'm turning this in early, so can you look at it and let me know some feedback? Okay, so yes, for the most part, but try to get your lab assistants first. All right. But I know a couple of people actually wanted me to look at it as well. All right. Then we come down to warning message errors. So there has to be no warning errors submitted in your code. And this is extremely important. So that is why it's worth 10 points. It's almost a letter grade of you, right? Just to make sure that your code doesn't have any warnings. Now, a warning error is something that the computer will say, hey, there's a problem. I'll still run it because it's not a problem that it will stop me, but it's at least a problem that you should be worried about. Okay, so make sure that you have no warning errors inside of your code when it's submitted. Then we come down to completeness and investment, which falls into professionalism. Basically, if you do everything that is required, you can get 5 points. If you're missing some things, then you're going to get 3 out of 5 points. Major pieces, 2 points, and finally 0 points. And the investment is basically, is your program relevant? Does it have merit? And did you take time on it? Okay. Did you actually sit there, think about what you're going to do, and continue with it, right? And is it useful? And that's pretty much all we're going to be grading on, okay? And the rest of these 4 pages is basically more in depth, and I want you guys to read them, about what you're learning, why you're doing it, which is always important. And again, if you have more, it kind of puts what I'm saying in different text as well. So if you kind of want to read it instead of listen to it, some people actually do it differently as well, okay? The hardest part of this is line number 3, right? Brainstorm an original idea for the calculator, and it has to have all of these different things. Brainstorming is what I get the most questions about in this whole class, okay? Because a lot of people have no idea what to code. Because in the previous assignments, like the worksheets, I tell you what to code. I'm like, hey, come up with a grocery calculator, right? Now I'm saying, code something you want to, which you're like, oh my God, given so much freedom, it almost makes it hard to choose, right? So what I always tell people is draw from your personal experience, okay? Draw from something that you either maybe have a passion for, maybe it's a hobby, maybe you have a family business, or maybe you have a different job that you can actually utilize it for. And look for a problem in what you're dealing with, and then come up with a solution for that problem. So that is the easiest way to brainstorm for an original idea for a calculator. Do I have any kind of questions about this in general? Any kind of questions? Any questions? No? Okay. The other thing is how to submit this. And you do have to zip the whole entire folder, right? And you have to submit the whole folder to us as a zipped file. And we'll go through that as well. And so that's kind of right here. And if you only send us one individual C# file, we will have to give you the 0 because we can't run an individual C# file. We need the whole folder or you will get a 0. So make sure that you are sending the whole folder. And we'll go through that as well. All right. So now that we're done with that, and up until this point, this is probably what weeks number 2, 3, and 4 will be. So it's a lot of talking about your homework and what's expected, and then opening up for you guys to ask questions, okay? But since this is week number 1, I wanted to make sure you guys started on the proper foot and kind of had an idea of what we're talking about for your week number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do some live coding. First things first is I am going to open the VMware Fusion. And I have my Windows 10 installed on our Mac, which does anybody else think this is trippy to be on a Mac and working on a Windows? Because I used to be a specific Windows person for quite a long time, and then when I started here at Full Sail like 4 years ago, now they're all Mac, right? So switching back and forth is like, oh my. It's stuff where it's like, I forget that these buttons are in the upper right-hand corner, where normally in a Mac, if I open it up, they're in the upper left-hand corner. It's weird things like that. I'm just like, oh my. All right, so it's fun, but it is kind of a little bit of a trip. So James says he thought it was weird because he set up his MacBook next to his PC and uses them both. I wish I could take a picture of my setup because literally I have an iMac sitting next to my MacBook Pro, sitting next to my PC laptop, sitting next to my external monitor. So my desk is completely covered in weird stuff. So I feel you on that. All right. Yeah, it's fun. So inside of Visual Studio, let's go ahead and start a new file. Okay. So we go to, File and down to New, over to Project. Make sure that we're in the Visual C# templates. We have the console application chosen, and then come down here to the name place. And what we're going to do is delete what's in there. Maybe. And then we are going to type it in ourselves. So the name we're going to use for this is Go to Training week number 1. Okay. And go ahead and press OK. Now you can go ahead and leave it here in the location because this is going to be your shared folders, and it's going to show up in both of your sides of things. So it's going to show up in your Mac and your PC sides. So that's why we're saving it here. But this actually causes an error, which is on the videos as well. So that's when we were in the console, it gives this little thing, and I'll show it to you in just a minute as well. But go ahead and press OK. Give it a minute, and it starts our new file. And if we open the Solution Explorer here on the right-hand side, and if for some reason you can't ever see this one over here on the right, you can actually go up to View and go to Solution Explorer as well. Now, this is the basic layout of our project, and here is our program.cs. This is the file we're going to be programming into for probably 3/4 of this class, okay? And inside of it, we have the using, which is what it starts with. And this is the imports that says, hey, I need all of the basic stuff that I'm going to be using. So that's why we're importing all this stuff at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink that. Then we have the namespace. Then we have the class which is going to become important in week number 4. And the class program has the main method. And when we launch this, the whatever is called main method is what's going to actually launch and automatically run when we start our program. So everything we're going to be doing is going to be starting in the main method. Okay. Now, the first things we're going to do is we're going to label this file as our own. So I'm going to start with a multi-lined comment, which is a slash and a star and a star and a slash. I'm going to go back inside of them and break them apart. Now I'm going to put my name on it, marking it as mine. So Dan Williams. Then I'll put my section number. So section number, and you guys are either 01 with Lee or 02 with me. But I'm just going to put 00 because I don't want to show a bias for one section or the other because you're both great. So then we have the name of what we're doing. So this is going to be called Go to Training, week number 1. And then what I like to put in is the date that I accessed it. So it is May 4th. Oh, it's May the 4th be with you. How did I not know that until now? Darn it. My Star Wars nerd friends are going to kick me. All right, so it is May 4th. So 4-4, 5-4, there we go. 5-4-2016, okay? Now, what I do is I update this date anytime I go back in there. And so if I'm coding on something for multiple days, I'll either update this date or I'll put a little start next to it. And then last modified. This is up to you guys, but if I come back in and I want to know when the last time I touched it was, that's my last modified date. But it's completely up to you. The things that I need you to put in, the very minimum, is your name, section number, what you're programming, so the name of the file, and the date that you actually did it. Okay? After that, we can go ahead and get started. Now, the hardest thing for this, like I said before, is brainstorm an original idea. So brainstorm an original idea. And notice I'm putting this in a single lined comment, which starts with that // So, and I'll just let you know now, and this is going to take the most time. Take you the most time. So spend time on this because you want a really good idea in order for the rest of your program to actually make sense. Keep in mind what I'm asking you for, the kind of constraints for it, and then keep that in mind when you're coming up with it. So for mine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a passion of mine. So use a passion. And mine is comic books. And I have over 5,000 of them, like I have a whole room dedicated to them. I'm kind of ridiculous about them. So I love comic books. And you'll find that a lot of my videos actually use this as well, because it's something that I know a lot about. And so I can actually use my knowledge of that and further my projects with it. And it's kind of an easy fit for me, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up with a comic book calculator. I'm going to put comic book price calculator. And what I'm going to keep track of is I'm going to come up with a monthly and yearly cost on how much I spend on comic books. How much I spend on comic books. Okay. And I will also tell you now that I am the worst speller in the world. So if I misspell something, you can go ahead and tell me in the chat window if it's important. Like if I misspell something really important, go ahead and tell me. But if it's just something like, I misspelled calculator, don't worry about it. Just, you know how to spell it. I have faith in you. Bing, you'll be good. All right. Oh, that's actually good. So I'm going to let him have it. Because that is actually super important. We have a question that he doesn't have a shared folder. That comes if you have the isolated or shared mode, and there is a way to switch between those. So actually, one of the students had that problem. So if you're on here, you can throw in your 2 cents for that as well. If not, we can talk about it at the end. Okay, so coming up with a calculator for monthly and yearly cost in comic books. You actually can switch that, Matthew, after the installation. There's a specific steps. So if you Google it, it's on there. But if you can't find it, let me know and we'll get it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with actually live coding. So the very first thing I want to do is go ahead and welcome the user and explain the purpose of our program. Ah, there you go. Actually, Daniel was able to fix it. Daniel, you're the one that actually had the problem before that we talked back and forth on it. So here's the way to switch it: is click the wrench at the top of the window, should open settings. At this point, open the shared directory and specify your directory. Well, there you go. Okay, so we're going to welcome the user and explain the purpose of our program. The reason we do this part is because we know that we can see these comments, right? But the final user won't be able to see these comments because these are for us. So we have to tell them what we're doing. Because imagine if we started a program and it said, hey, what's your social security number? You're like, what? Why do you want that information, right? But if we say, hey, welcome to the loan calculator, we're going to figure out how much you get to throw, but it's going to be based on your social security number. And then you say, hey, what's your social security number? People are going to be more likely to give you information, right? If they know exactly what it's going to be used for. So anytime we talk to the user, we're going to be doing a console.writeLine. So we do console.writeLine, open, closing, and a semicolon. Inside of there, double quotes, which means a text string. And we'll just say, welcome to the comic book calculator. I'm going to put a \r, \n, which is a new line return. Basically the same thing as pressing enter and return, right? And then we're going to say, we are going to calculate the monthly and yearly cost of comic books. That's it. So that's welcoming the user. Now, the weird thing about this one is we can't just press the start button, right? So we press the start button, all it does is we'll run it, takes a minute, it'll go ahead and blink through for a minute, and then it'll be done. And the problem is that the console pops up and then immediately goes away, because that's it, right? Not what we want at all, because we actually want to be able to see what's in the console. So the way we actually run this is we go to debug at the top, and then we start without debugging. So choose debug and start without debugging. The keyboard shortcut for that, by the way, is Control and F5. So if you're on the Mac, that's going to be working as well. So once we do that, what happens is the console window will stay up and will wait for us to press a key to go. Okay. Now, here is that error that I was talking about before. Because we are trying to put it in a virtual directory, it has trouble with it, and so that's why it defaults to the main directory, and so that's why it becomes at the top. Okay. It's still F5. So David wants to know, what is F5 for the Mac? Sometimes you have to hit the function key in your bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard. So that would be the Control, the function key, and the F5 key at the top. All right, so here we have our welcome to the comic book calculator. We're going to calculate the monthly and yearly cost, and we're going to press enter to continue. All right, so we pop it up, and we are good to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to prompt for some basic info. So let's prompt the user for basic information. So what do we need in order to get a monthly and yearly cost, right? So there's a couple different things we need from the user. So we need the cost of a comic book and the how many books do you buy? Books do you buy per trip? And then we also need to know how many times do you go in a month? How many trips in a month? Now, I came up with these myself, right? So there's no magic formula. There's no, oh my gosh, what should I be asking the user? What should I be doing? Because it depends upon what you're trying to come up with or the problem you're trying to solve, okay? Say you're doing a tip calculator for the restaurant again. Then that would be, how much is the total bill? Was the service good? And how many people are in your group? So then we can actually take the total, figure out the tip, and then divide it by the total number of people in the trip. So these givens that you're calling them are going to be asked for the user, right? But you have to figure out what they are. So there's no magic formula for that. So the very first thing we have to do is let's prompt for the cost of the comic book. So prompt for the cost of a comic. So anytime we're prompting the user, that's going to be talking to the user, which is going to be the console.writeLine. Text string inside of it. And instead of here, we'll start with a \r, \n. And what is the average price of a comic book? And then I put a \r, \n again, and we'll tell them the very first time, hey, once you're done with it, press enter when done. because some people don't actually know to hit enter. They think they can just type it in and it magically goes, right? So after we prompt the user for this, what we have to do is we have to listen and store the user's response. And we have to store that inside of a variable. And who can tell me what type of variable this is going to be? Anybody in the live session? What type of variable? Yeah, it's a string, right? So anytime that we're prompting the user for anything, we're going to use the read line command. And the read line command only returns string variables. And you'll know that I mentioned this when I was talking about the homework as well, right? Because that is the reason why we have to parse the numbers. Because we have to parse the string into a number data type. Because we can only get strings. So let's go ahead and create a string variable to catch it. So we first start with a lowercase string, then a space. Then I'm going to put comic price string. Notice I'm using camel casing. So that is the lowercase, it starts with the lowercase, and we capitalize every word, right? So price and string are capitalized. That way we can easily read it and we don't need spaces inside of it, okay? We're going to set that equal to, and we're going to set equal to the console.readLine method. And all that does is let the user type in something, and whatever they type in will be stored inside of this variable. So just to kind of test it for us, let's go ahead and console.writeLine it back out. And I'm going to put the comic price string inside of it. Let's go ahead and run this. So debug and start without debugging. Here we go. So what is the average price of a comic book? Press enter when done. So I'm going to say $4. We hit enter and it spits it right back to us. So far so good. However, what if I try to verify that this was a number? And I'm going to say, well, what is 2 times that? So what is the comic price times 2? Now, if you notice here, there's already a red squiggly line underneath it. And that should be the indication that something is wrong, right? So if you put your cursor over it, it's going to tell you, hey, you can't do this because the operator multiply cannot be applied to the operand of type string and integer. So it's basically saying you can't multiply a string times a number. Which, think about it. What is 2 times a banana, right? You don't get 2 bananas because you can't really multiply a banana times 2, right? So that's why it's giving you the error. However, if you still try to run this, by the way, it will say, hey, there are build errors. Would you like to continue? And if you see this ever, never hit yes, right? Because it's would you like to continue and run the last successful build? So it's not saying, hey, I'm going to run this new one. It's going to run the last one for you, which isn't what you want. So go ahead and press no. When you do, the error list will pop up, okay? This is extremely important to check before you turn in your work because it will tell you the errors and will also tell you if there's any warnings, right? And remember, warnings count for 10% of your final grade. So if you have any warnings here, make sure that you deal with them. And you are correct, Stephen. So it's really nice because it actually tells you the line number that the problem is. So it gives you the description of it, and it says, hey, this is in line 47. So if we scroll down to line 47, we say, oh, that's where that is. And if you don't know what this means, Google it, type in C# and whatever it gives you here, and it will give you a description of how to fix it as well, okay? So this is the problem. We can't multiply that times that. So I'm going to go ahead and kill my error window, and I'm going to take that off for now. And instead of that, what we have to do is we have to convert this. Okay. So all of this console write line was just for testing purposes. Actually, let's go ahead and do this. Let's keep it in our code where we're just going to comment it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a / in front of it. And that was just to make sure that it was being recorded and we can actually get it back. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to convert the string into a number data type. And we're going to do that using the parse command. Use the parse command. Or actually, probably method is better. There we go. Okay, so how this method works is we need to start with the data type we would like to convert to. So since we're dealing with money, the price of something, right, we have to use the data type of decimal, because anytime we're dealing with money in general, you want to be able to use decimals, because it could cost $4.25, right? And you want to use the most significant digits and the most accurate numbers. And so that is going to be the decimal data type. So decimal and then a space. I'm going to call this one comic price. And the reason I'm calling this is because this is comic price string, because this is the string version of that variable. This is going to be the normal type of this, and so that's why I'm just going to call it comic price. I'm going to set that equal to, then decimal again, dot parse, open and closing parentheses, and a semicolon. So data type we're converting to, name of the variable, then the data type we're converting to, dot parse. If we're converting it to an integer, then this would be int.parse. Okay, double.parse. This can be anything we want, as long as these match. Okay, so inside of the parse parentheses, and if you put your little thing over it, see there's an error. It says, hey, we're trying to get some stuff here. We need at least one argument, which is what that means right here. I'll read it to you. No overload method for parse takes 0 argument. So at the very least, we need an argument. And that's the stuff that goes inside of here. And we have to put inside of here is the comic price string variable. So what this is basically saying is, take the string variable, if it's possible to parse it, put it in this variable. Let's go ahead and test it again. So console.writeLine. Inside of here, we're just going to put the comic price this time. All right. Let's go ahead and run it. Debug. Start without debugging. Enter a price. Let's say it's $4.50. So notice it comes back up here. And this is coming from this console.writeLine. So again, we can't really tell if it's a text string or a number. So the easiest way I like to do it is just multiply up times 2. Notice this time we don't really have the red squiggle, which is a good thing, right? So when we run it now, and I type in $4.50, now times 2, it's $9. So this is actually showing you that it can do math, right? But I want to show you what happens when somebody types in a not correct value. For example, say I was trading somebody comic books, and the price of my comic book is going to be a Spider-Man. Now I hit enter, and it's like, whoa, this is horrible, because you know what? It actually breaks our whole program. Has anybody gotten to this yet? Has anybody actually broken it? So a couple of people. So what happens here is you want to kind of take this out of the way, and you want to actually read what's going on. And the main thing is it will tell you the input string was not in a correct format. Okay, so you can hit the debug button, but it becomes confusing, and it's kind of above our pay grade at this point. So just kind of read what it says right here. Input string was not in the correct format. Okay, hit close program, which will shut this down. And let's come back here. So if I typed in Spider-Man, can Spider-Man be converted to a decimal? No, right? Because there's no number equivalent of a text string Spider-Man. So the problem with parse is that it will throw a runtime error and stop our program. Well, right now in week number 1, there's nothing we can do to stop it. Okay, so that's the bad part. Once we get to week number 2, when we actually start using conditionals, we can actually stop the user from typing in weird things and give them a second chance. But for right now, just assume that everybody's going to be typing in the correct things. Okay, not a good assumption, but week number 1, we don't really have a choice. Okay, so we have tested it. We made sure it worked. We made sure it's a number just by multiplying it times 2 or whatever, right? But now I'm going to go ahead and comment that out because we don't need that in our final code. Okay, so now that we have the very first value, let's go ahead and ask him for the next thing. Okay, so let's prompt for the next value or next question. And the next question, if we look back here at the top, was how many books do you buy per trip? So console.writeLine, open close and a semicolon, text string. Inside of here, I like to start with the /r /n just because it's a new line return and it kind of gives me a space inside of the program and it looks better. I usually will start with something like got it, because then the user feels like the computer actually took in its thing and acknowledged that it actually got it, right? And a comic book costs $, outside of that, a plus sign for concatenation, comic price, plus sign again, another set of double quotes, a period. So this is telling the user, got it, a comic book costs, and then it's re-putting out the price that they actually put in here. So it's just kind of a check. The user kind of likes to see it because then they see, oh, okay, it actually understood what I was saying. That's the only reason I really do it. So after that, I'm going to put a /r /n and then ask my next one. So on average, how many comics do you buy per trip? So we gave the user some feedback, boop, and asked it the next question right here. So since we asked another question, what do we have to do next, right? So since we asked it, we need to be able to capture the response again. So listen and capture user's response. And again, not a trick question, but what type of variable is this going to be? Yep, string. So anytime that we're asking the user, we're going to get back to string. So just kind of embed that in your mind. So string and then a space. I'm going to call it times per month. Again, I'm using camel casing. And after that, I'm going to put string. So times per month string equals console, spelled correctly, dot read line. Open close, semicolon. Remember, nothing goes inside of this parentheses. So now that we got it, we can, again, if you want to do another console write line, just to kind of make sure. And for you guys learning how to test, learning how to code, testing it's not a bad thing, but we're going to kind of skip it because we're kind of going a little bit over right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert the string to a number. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and convert it to an integer, because can I have 4.5 comic books? Probably not, right? Because I want to combine it to just or confine it probably to a whole number. So I'm going to type in int and then a space. I'm going to call this one times per month. So it matches this with just without the string, equals int dot parse this time, open close and a semicolon. Inside of here, we're going to put that times per month string. So that's going to convert it for us. Now again, if you want to, you can go ahead and do that multiply times 2 to make sure that it actually did convert to a number, but we don't really have to right now because we're just going to assume it worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the user feedback. And actually, you know what? We can either combine it like we did here or just do separate lines. It doesn't really matter, actually. So let's just do a console.writeLine, open close, semicolon. And so we say something like /r /n. Great. So you buy a space, plus sign for concatenation. Oops. Times per month. Let me try that one more time. Oh, times. Okay, wait. So, do you already see what I did here? I forgot the S. Times per month, times per month. I had time per month, which is why it wasn't coming up. So we're going to come back inside of here. So you buy plus sign times per month. There we go. That's the other nice thing about that autocomplete is it tells you if there's an error. Plus sign again, text string, starting with a space, comics per trip. So that's going to give that user feedback. Hey, we understood what you said, we converted it, and we're going to spit it back to you. Let's ask for the third and final. For the third item. And what was that again? If we go back up, that's going to be how many trips do you take per month? So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, put it down here. How many trips per month? So again, a console.writeLine, open close, semicolon, backslash R, backslash N for a new line, and put how many trips, oops, to the comic store do you make in a month? Perfect. All right, so since we asked a question, what do we have to do? We have to save the response. Okay, so again, listen and record user response. String variable again. We're going to call this one, let's call it times, oops, per month string equals console dot read line this time, open close and a semicolon. Once we get that string in, we have to convert it. Convert string to number. So again, how many times am I going to the store? It's going to be a whole number. So I'm going to stick with an int, because you always want to use the smallest number you can, or smallest data type you can. So that's going to be that int. Oh my gosh, I am. What do they call that then? Well, let me look. Oh, you know what? You have an error. Let's actually see what it says. So a local variable named times per month string is already defined in the scope. So a couple of you nailed that right off the bat. So who said that first? Monica said it first. Nicely done, Monica. Claps. So what this is saying is, hey, you can't redeclare a variable you already did, right? So it's saying, hey, this variable is the same name as that variable, because I meant not times per month, I meant trips per month, right? So trips per month makes more sense. So for this one, we're going to do int trips per month. And thank you very much for catching that. Actually, a lot of you caught it. Nice. Very good. And Kelly wants to know when this video will be posted. I'll make sure it's posted tonight. So it usually takes me like an hour to convert it and get it up on YouTube. So yeah. I know, David's right. You have to beware of that autocomplete. I use it too much as well. So we're going to do that converting int trips per month equals int dot parse, open close, semicolon. Inside of here, we have that trips per month string. So the string version, converting it to the number version. All right, so now we might as well give some user feedback here. User feedback. So another console.writeLine, open closed. Inside of here, text string, and inside that text string, we'll just kind of put a little bit back for it. So we'll say, so you go, actually, let me put a little space here just to make sure. The backslash n doesn't really need a space, but it's fine. So you go to the shop, plus sign, trips per month, plus sign again, text string, times per month. All right, so let's see if we're up to this point. So we're going to run it. Debug, start with debug. Start without debug, I mean. And here we go. So we have, what is the average price of a comic book? We'll say they are $3.50. Got it, a new comic book costs $3.50. On average, how many comic books do you buy per trip? Let's say 5. Great, so you buy 5 comics per trip. How many trips do you make in a month? Well, once a week, so 4. So you go to the shop 4 times per month. So that's the last thing we got so far. I'm going to take out that space because it actually drove me nuts. I shouldn't have put it in the first place. All right, so now what we do is, now that we have all of the different components that we need, right? Now we're actually going to do the math stuff. So this is my favorite part. So we're doing the math stuff. So the first thing we need to figure out is, right, this is fun, is how much the user spends per trip, okay? So calculate and store how much the user spends per trip, okay? So since we're dealing with money still, we have to use this as a decimal. So it's going to be a decimal data type and then a space. I'm going to call it spend per trip equals, how do we figure this out, right? So basically, how much they spend per trip is the number of comics times how much they are. Right? So how many comic books do you buy per month, and how much are the comic books? Right? So spend per trip is going to equal, we kind of got to go back up. What is that first one we asked? What is the comic price and times per month? Okay. So, you know what I did? Times per month. I see what I'm doing here. Anyway, so the math will still work out. I probably should have named them different, but that's okay. So comic price times the trips per month, and then a semicolon. So this is how many am I buying? Not trips, times. Jesus, this is horrible. Times per month times the comic book price. Okay, so that is going to be the comic price we got here, which is also nice because it actually is highlighting for itself, because anywhere we actually highlight it once, it highlights it all over. And then if we have times per month, this is actually where we got that. Times per month, and then we have trips per month, okay? So that will send us how much we spend per trip. Actually, I want to show you one more thing. Let me pull up the view and error list. So view and error list in case you can't find it, right? So do we have any errors yet? View, error list. So far we are good. Do we have any errors? Do we have any warnings? All right, we're fine. So let's continue. The next thing we want to do is we like to calculate the monthly cost. So how do we do that? Well, how much do you spend per trip? And how many trips do you make? Times number of trips, right? So let's again store that inside of decimal, then a space. Let's say spend per month. So we take how much they do per trip, right? So when we just calculated right above, oops, spend per trip, and then times our trips per month. So remember, we got the trips per month right here. That's where we converted it at. And so that's how many trips they make a month times how much they spend per trip. We'll tell you how much they spend per month. Everybody with me so far on the math? Any questions? Okay, so the other thing that we have to do, according to our top, where we came up with this, we have to figure out the yearly cost as well. So I'm going to come back down. So now calculate the yearly cost. And what that is, it's basically the monthly cost times 12, because there's 12 months in a year, right? But I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to use an assignment operator. All right, in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm still going to create this variable, decimal, spend per year, and I'm going to set it equal to spend per month. Now I'm going to then use that assignment operator to multiply it times 12. So it's spend per year times equals 12. And this is the shortcut way of basically saying take the value of spend per year, multiply it times 12, and then store it back inside of that same variable. So that's how I would use an assignment operator. How you guys are going to use it is going to be different, because don't copy the code, right? Now, I want to show you the wrong way of doing this. Wrong way. Do not do this. Okay, everybody clear? Do not do what I'm about to show you. So you can only use an assignment operator, one assignment operator per line. So I'm going to put that up here. So only use one assignment operator per line. So this is what some people try to do. So they do decimal, right? Spend per year wrong, okay? And they set that equal to spend per month times equals 12, okay? So the problem with this is we have one assignment operator equals, and then an assignment operator times equals, okay? So this is two in the same sentence. And this does not do what you think it does, because it's not the same thing as saying spend per month times 12. And here's the difference. Because if we were to actually console out, I'm going to go ahead and do it, both of these values. So let me put in some descriptive text. This is spend per year wrong and spend per year wrong, right? And then I'm going to take the console.WriteLine and, oops, semicolon, and I'm going to say spend per month wrong. And I'm going to plus, oops, concatenate in the spend per month variable. Let's see what this actually does. So I'm going to do some numbers that is actually fairly easy. So I'm going to say comic book cost 5. I'm going to say I buy 4 of them per trip, and I'm going to say I make 4 trips. Okay. So if we go to the shop, then spend per year wrong is $960, and spend per month is $960. So the problem with that is, right, if you look at it, spend per month shouldn't be $960, right? Because $5 a comic book times 4 is $20 a trip, times 4 is $80 per month. Okay, so what it's doing is it's actually taking this $80 per month, multiplying it times the 12, and storing that $960 back in this variable. So it is permanently changing the value of spend per month. Okay, then it is setting spend per year wrong equal to the value of spend per month. So if you actually try to use spend per month later in your code, it will permanently be wrong. Does everybody see what's happening here? So this permanently changed this variable, and this variable takes on that value. That is why this is horrible. Okay. We have a quick question from Monica. Monica wants to know, for the assignment variable, can we use a variable instead of a given variable, like a variable for the user input instead of the number 12 in this example? So she wants to know, can we do spend per year times the comic price, right? Absolutely. So it's still kind of math. So 1,000% you can do it. And it's probably better because this is actually hard coding it, right? So sometimes it's fine because 12 months in a year is always going to be 12 months in a year, so you don't really have to worry about it. But yeah, so if you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome to. All right, so everybody gets why this is wrong. So do not do this. I'm going to go ahead and just comment out this whole thing. So I'm putting a / in front of it. So don't do it. All right. Okay. So we are now using the spend per year. So the thing that's going to be left, right, is to do this final outputs. And basically tell the user what we found. Okay. So this is just going to be a series of console.WriteLines, open close, semicolon, text string, and I'm going to start with a \r, \n, just do a new line return. You will spend, and then a $, because $, remember, isn't going to be part of that number, so we have to add it in ourselves, plus spend per trip, plus another set of double quotes, and then a space. And so then we have per trip. Well, that's actually a good question, Ashanti. Remind me that when I ask for questions at the end, and we'll come back to that one, okay? So per trip. Then we'll have console.WriteLine, open close, semicolon, inside of here. And then we'll have which means you will spend $, outside of it a +sign again, spend per month, plus another set of double quotes for text string, each month. So that finishes that one. And finally one is console.WriteLine. So in 1 year, you will have spent a $sign again, outside of it, +sign for concatenation, spent per year, +sign, another set of double quotes, on comic books. All right, so that's going to be our final outputs. Now, there's going to be one more thing that I'm going to do I'm actually going to close this window so we can actually kind of get rid of it. And this is to make sure that we put in our testing section, okay? So I'm going to put in multi-line comment, so a slash star and a star slash. Break it out. Back inside of here, this is going to be testing section. Now I know I'm going to ask for 3 numbers, right? So I'm going to put cost of comic. I'm going to put number of comics and number of trips. And then computer will give me, right, spent per trip, spent per month, and spent per year. Now, I want you guys to write these out, that this is what I'm typing in, and this is what I'm asking the computer to calculate, okay? So now, when we run this, oops, totally pulled the microphone. Can you guys tell me here? Okay. So now when we run this, debug, start with debugging, we're going to go ahead and type in some values. So I'm going to type in the ones we just used. So I'm going to say a comic book cost $5. I'm going to say on average I buy 4 comics and I take 4 trips in a month. So now it spits out, I will spend $20 per trip, $80 per month, and $960 on comic books in 1 year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this off to the side and I'm going to transfer those values over to my testing section. So I'm going to say $5, 4 comics, 4 trips, then per trip it gives me $20, and it will give me $80 per month and $960 per year. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check those. So I'm going to go ahead and close my window. I'm going to pull up a calculator. And on the Mac, it's just Command and Spacebar, which will open up the Spotlight search. Or you can always go up to the little magnifying glass up here in the right-hand corner. And I'm going to type calc, and calculator will pop up, right? Also, inside of Windows, if you're a Windows person, if you come down here to the Start bar, you can also find a calculator down here in the All Apps as well. So All Apps, and then go to the CS calculator. So whatever way you want to do it, there's 2. I just like this one because it's quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate these for myself. If I buy a comic book and it's $5, and I buy 4 of them, so I'm going to multiply that times 4. So I know I'm going to spend $20. So if I check down here, yep, so that is correct. I spent $20 per trip. Now if I take 4 trips, so I'm just going to multiply this times 4. So then I say 80. Okay, so this is $80 per month, which makes sense. So that actually is accurate. Now I'm going to take this and then multiply it times 12, because there's 12 months in a year, which will give me 960, and that's actually the same value it gave me now. So what I'm going to write down here is checked with a calculator, calculator, I cannot spell, and all values are correct. Now, this is one test. I would expect you guys to do maybe 2, so maybe to do the same thing, run it again. So let me just go ahead and copy that. Let's come down here. I'm going to go ahead and delete these numbers. Oops. And let me run it again. Debug. Start with debugging. So what if I enter $3.25? I'm going to buy 7 comic books, and I'm only going to go 3 times per month. So now it gives me some weirder numbers. So let me go ahead and transfer them over. Oops. Scroll down. So let me transfer over here. Kind of take this off to the side. So I'm going to say the cost of a comic book is $3.25. The number of comic books I buy was 7. Number of trips is 3. It gives me, per trip, $22.75. Right here is $68.25. And then finally, it gives me $819.00 per month, or per year. All right, handy dandy calculator, pull it up. So we take $3.25 per comic book times $7. David is correct, by the way. David said that is a ton of money in comic books, and every time I make this calculator, it makes me sad because I spend that much money in comic books. So $22.75. So that is correct. Now, if I take 3 trips, so I'm going to multiply that times 3, $68.25, correct? And multiply that times 12, and that gives me $819. So again, these are checked. So I'm just going to copy this line so I don't have to write it again. And everything is good to go. So that's going to be an example of what you guys are going to be creating in your first activity. Okay. Now, this is the tricky part for this. Okay. You can't use this idea or anything like this idea inside of your own code. Okay. So do not calculate how much you spend on coffee. Okay. Because then what will you be asking? You'll be asking, hey, what is the average price of a coffee cup? How many times do you buy coffee? And how many times in a month do you go to Starbucks? Okay. Can everybody agree that that code would be super similar to my code about a comic book? Okay. So this is that same thing about your code has to be distinctly different because the math down here and do the math, right, would be exactly the same. The only thing you'd be doing is just changing spent per trip. Actually, that's the same. It'd be coffee price. It'd be probably be the only difference, right? So just retyping my code and giving it back to me, not good. Completely brainstorm your own idea that has nothing to do with this, all right? Now, I'm going to go back to Ashanti's question. She asked me, what about the array, okay? In my example, I didn't use an array. Do you guys have to use an array? Absolutely, right? What could I have done for an array? Well, I could have maybe said at the very top, instead of, where is it, the average price of a comic book, maybe I would find the average price of a comic book, right? So up here, where can I put this? Let's put it over here. Maybe I'm going to prompt for 3 values of comics and find the average. Right? So I would create an array here. So create an array, store the 3 values of comics, and then find the total average. Not total average, just the average. So that's how we would kind of fit that in, right? Could I have also, instead of creating 3 different variables for comic price string, could I have put user responses and then made this user response with an index of 0? Then the next one would be user response with an index of 1. Then user response with an index of 2. Absolutely, right? Because an array is just multiple variables. So that's kind of the main thing that we have to be mindful of. All right? Ashanti, does that answer your question? Perfect. Okay, does anybody else have any other kind of questions that I can answer about what I helped code here or about your assignment that's going to be due this week? Any questions? All right, so it looks like there is no questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording, but everybody stay that's live for 1 second. But for those of you watching later, if you have questions about this, then contact your course director and we should be able to answer them. So either Lee or myself, email Lee, or you can contact me on Slack. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.